Like,
oh yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I prefer it when it's a conversation because we're not teaching. Like I do want.
I will never be a teacher.
Like I want the millstone to teach, but like in person. I want to have actual organized events where men show up, you sit down, you have not a true curriculum, you know, not like, oh, let's everybody, there's a 100 question test at the end of this, you know, but that there is you have a template of like, hey, this is the type of stuff, this is what we teach, you know, and of course you interject biblical manhood into it.
And it means nothing for your next job
interject
interview.
Scripture into it. Yeah, exactly. You're not getting some certification that's going to get you a raise at work.
Right.
But maybe you'll leave and you'll have a deeper understanding of integrity. You'll have a deeper understanding of how to walk out those how to build that foundation. That way you have that character that you're seeking. Because there's a lot of men that they don't want it. They're not seeking it. They're not seeking self-discipline. I got a guy at work that cusses every other word out of his mouth. He says GD 45,000 times a day. And even though I've said something to him, I'm not his father, I'm not his boss, you know, but I don't appreciate quite so much. You know, you're going to cuss, you're going to cuss. I'm
right.
Like, especially...
We live in the world.
Exactly. And I talk to the lost about Jesus, but I don't preach to the lost. I talk mostly to saved people when it comes to preaching to them. Like, hey, you say you believe this, but you're living your life like Rip. And I don't mean from Yellowstone, because I don't watch that junk. And yeah, it's gonna sound judgy. I can't stand when I see people who claim to be Christians talking about watching Yellowstone, because I've watched a small enough clip of it to know that there's no reason that junk should be going in and out of my ears.
I haven't watched it.
And I love westerns. All right, one of my favorite movies was Tombstone. I haven't watched it since I've been saved. Like, and it's not the violence. I don't mind the violence.
It's been so long since I've watched it. So how bad is it?
It's
because I was probably like 10 or 11, and I watched it on TV.
I don't think they say GD in it.
I'm not a big westerner.
But
I wasn't a big. I don't want to say this come out right, but I wasn't a big John Wayne fan.
That's
I didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, I could have watched John Wayne or Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter.
Well, that's my thing. Like, I love those TV shows, those old movies like that. But like Tombstone for me was the western. They wore accurate. They wore accurate western clothes. They wore accurate western revolvers. They wore accurate western pistol belts. Like they didn't. No gunslinger had their pistol belt hanging down around their cheeks. Like it was high and tight because you wanted to be able to pull that sucker out in an instant and fire as soon as possible, no matter what, from horseback, from whatever, you know. And so a lot of these westerns where they show them with that gun belt hanging all the way past on their thigh, it's like that's not. They didn't carry on their thigh; they carried on their hip, on their waist, up high, so their hand could get to it fast, and they could get a shot off. So me,
John Wayne was sagging before anybody else.
Yep. So Tombstone was the western movie for me, and they're remaking it. And I'm not going to watch it, of course, and not because they're remaking it, but I'm just not going to watch it because if Tombstone, the original, is too much for me to watch as a Christian, I guarantee you Tombstone, the remake, is going to be too much for me to watch as a Christian.
I didn't know they was remaking it.
But even those things go into play as a man, trying to carry yourself with integrity and everything, you know. Being a man of integrity and of sound character, what are you putting into your mind?
Right.
What are you putting into your body, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally? Do you read? Do you watch?
Nutritionally.
Do you just watch junk all day long? Like, I'm just scrolling YouTube, watching junk. I'm just playing video games hours on end. There's nothing wrong with video games of themselves.
Or a lot of YouTube videos of themselves.
Exactly. I watch a ton of YouTube videos from
How to be a man.
Yeah, manhood. Being a man, being of sound character. John Lovell from Warrior Poet Society. Chad Wright, ex-Navy SEAL, sound man of integrity. He believes in Christ. Him and John Lovell both believe in Christ. One was a Ranger, one was a SEAL.
Isn't Sean Ryan a Christian now?
Yeah, he's still a little loose with his mouth to a point where I don't like it.
He'll get there.
But I have been way worse than he currently is. So at the same time,
Well, you talking about you have been way worse as a Christian than he is now?
I have been way worse when I was attempting to be a Christian as a young man.
Not this go around.
Not this go round.
Okay.
No. And that's not to say I've dropped a F-bomb since I've been saved. I've said the D word since I've been saved. Things happen. You do get even men who are seeking being
aren't you supposed to be perfect?
Emotionally and physically sound and having strong moral character, even they are going to get occasionally overwhelmed emotionally, mentally, or physically. And so I do. I'm on YouTube quite a bit, especially because I work in IT. I have time to read and be on YouTube, but I don't watch junk. I don't go watch this garbage, silly, unorganized, chaotic influencer stuff. I watch men that have a desire to be men. I watch men who have a desire to be men of integrity. I watch men who speak well on politics. I watch men who speak well on being able to defend oneself and one's family. And then I read. I don't read just a bunch of nonsense. I read Bible. I read history. And not just because I believe, well, if you don't know history, history repeats itself. History is repeating itself right now.
Whether you know history or not, it's going to repeat itself.
Exactly.
You're just one man.
Because, man has these same innate desires, period. All of man has the same innate desires at some point, whether it be as an individual or as a organized group. Any group that is different from another group, there's going to be a group that hates it. Any country that is built up of multiple peoples is going to have conflicts. You're never going to have just the most perfect, most peaceful, utopian society. Because there is no perfect man or woman walking the face of the earth.
Well, that's not what the New World Order says.
And they would not know if a fly bit them on the butt. And so there's nothing wrong with even though watching a little bit of TV. We like Star Wars. And so we watch some of the Star Wars related stuff.
I like most Star Wars.
There's been some that I haven't enjoyed.
Yeah. Newest trilogy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, they got rid of all the men. Like, literally, Han Solo was a rugged but good guy. Like, he wanted to be this renegade, but even in his renegade
he fought his morality.
And smuggler and all this stuff, like, he fought with morality, and in the end, morality still won. He still ended up doing the good thing, even though he wanted to be this loner, he wanted to be left alone. He still, when he got roped in, he finally was like, well, it's got to be done, and I'm here, I might as well do it. And then they kill him off. Luke was not some cowardice, you know, run and hide and not show up when it's necessary.
Like
Man.
in the third trilogy.
And then they turn him around and he shows up as a force projection and fights a battle that meant nothing, and then he just fades into the night. He forced himself to death. Now I understand why Yoda finally got sick and tired of him and just was like, I'm going to go to sleep and die. Because if that's what he was going to turn into and I was his mentor, I'd be like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of trying to train this young fella too. Because he's just going to turn into a coward.
Let's just all go to sleep and die.
But, yeah, society, especially in the entertainment industry right now, is playing a major role in trying to make men look like less.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that women aren't capable. We are different. We're literally, physically, biologically, mentally different. We handle stress in different ways. We handle emotions in different ways. We handle physical needs in different ways. We're just literally different. Some of us are better at different things. Women oftentimes are better at understanding the emotions of people than men are. Mm-hmm. Because part of my issue is I practice taking care of my own emotions. And so when you're over there pouting and bickering and unable to control yours, I want to look at someone and go, suck it up and do something. Because the biggest way, I think, for most men to deal with their emotions is to do something. Because, well, look at men on disability, right? And this isn't anything against them, but they can't do a lot of times. Now, of course, we know there's some that are just milking the system for what they can, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about the ones that literally can't. Look at their emotional and mental health versus an able-bodied person. A lot of times they have more ups and downs, just emotional high and lower lows. And it's because they just can't do. And a lot of men, especially young men nowadays, who struggle with their emotions, if they would get up off the couch, go to the gym, hour a day. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't even have to go to the gym. Do push-ups and go for a run. Unless you work in a physically demanding job. You know, a lot of times that helps. That's why your blue-collar workers, sure, they have suicide rates, but they're not that high.
Right.
They're out there working. I don't know anybody who's ever went on a 12-mile hike through the mountains that's come back and was depressed and suicidal. Like, exhausted. But usually, that exhaustion has helped melt away some of those emotions. And now, they're like, okay, I'm good. I'm fine. And so I tell a lot of the guys, go do something. Get up. Don't lay around. Oh, well, I don't feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
I paused on the whole podcast thing while Mom was sick, but I didn't stop living. My job didn't stop. My duties as a husband and a father and as a homesteader didn't stop. I still had to take care of these animals. I couldn't neglect them just because my mom was sick and died. And so a lot of that helped manage those emotions. And I still had days where I would finally get that pause and I'd be like, you know.
Breakdown.
Yeah. You know, but I never had just I don't have extreme emotional outbursts. And I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be an emotional man. I used to be verbally and mentally weak when it came to my emotions. And so if I was having a moment, me and my ex-wife would have an argument. It didn't matter if her emotions needed attention, because I was emotionally damaged. I was emotionally weak. I didn't have any intestinal fortitude when it came to being a man. And so I went with what I knew. And I was like, well, I know this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm rolling with. And I put that on her. As to where I should have been able to go.
Whether you realize it or not.
Whether I realize it or not.
Right.
And at the time, as a young man, I didn't realize it. You know, I see that now as a 35-year-old man looking back.
Who went through it.
Yeah. You know, and I'm no longer living in it. And it's so much easier to look back on something that you're not living in. Man, I messed up. You know? As to where in the situation, when you're being run by your emotions, you look at it and you go, well, they were wrong. Who cares if they were wrong? So they were wrong, and you just flipped the lid and let them have it, and you lost all integrity for a moment just because you let your emotions run away with you. That makes no sense.
In the moment, it does.
Oh, yeah, of course. In the moment, you're like, it made me feel good.
It's the answer.
But then you turned around and made somebody feel about this big.
Yeah.
And that's never.
Whether they deserved it or not.
That's never right. I put that stuff out on my kids when I had my first two kids. You know, well, daddy's emotional. Daddy's not dealing with his emotions well. Go to your room and play. Kids need to be able to play in their room. They need to. But they need time with adults because you're not raising children.
You're raising adults.
You're raising adults.
Mm-hmm.
They're currently children, but if you're raising them to just be children for the rest of their lives, well, look at society.
Right.
They want to play all day and not work, and then they gripe and complain, well, I can't afford this, and I can't do that, I can't buy a house, blah, blah, blah. I'm an uneducated Southern boy. I do not have a high school diploma. I have a GED. I've never been to college. I'm sitting on 17 acres of land in a 4-bedroom house with a stay-at-home wife. If I can work my way to make enough money to pay for it, anyone can. Anyone. It takes work. You don't get to sit down on the couch for 4 hours and watch Star Wars. You don't get to sit down on the couch for 4 hours and play video games, 5 hours and play video games. You don't get to be up till 3 a.m. playing Call of Duty, Black Ops, whatever they are on, and then go get an hour's of sleep and go to work. Because if that's how you're doing it, you're never going to have
anything more than what you already have.
You'll never have the mental clarity to strive for more. And there was a time where I didn't strive for more. There was a time as a young man, I was like, I will never make more than $36,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a job offer making $48,000, and I was like, that's over $10,000 more a year than I'm making now. And I look back now, I'm like, man, $48,000 a year ain't nothing. Especially if you look at the economy we're living in, you know? And that $48,000 now is so far below a livable wage for most people that it's insane. And I know there's people out there, well, somebody's got to do that job. Nobody has to work at McDonald's. McDonald's is not a necessity for anybody.
No.
You don't need McDonald's.
Actually, it might be best if we didn't have a McDonald's.
That's my thing. Like, I'm not hating on McDonald's.
Unless
thing
McDonald's
is,
wants to, sponsor the Millstone project.
Yeah, I don't think they would want to. And I'm not hating on McDonald's. I'm not hating on people who work at McDonald's.
Maybe not the people.
But McDonald's is not a necessity for people to survive, as far as what the service that they provide. Now, the aspects of them providing work for people and a paycheck for people, obviously, people need to be paid, people need a job. Mm-hmm. So that is a necessity. But there's other jobs out there that aren't filled. There's other jobs out there that aren't filled that pay more.
Mm-hmm.
But are you willing to do the work? Oh, well, I don't want to be a plumber. I don't want to be an electrician. I don't want to be a lineman. Okay, well then you'll never make that money.
Right.
Well, I don't want to go study for a cert that costs $700.
I'd much rather be an electrician or a plumber than working fast food too.
100%, especially because after a couple of years of being in training under someone, which is usually paid, it's not like an internship where you're working for some law firm while you're in school doing all their little petty work and not getting any pay and hoping you get a job after.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting real life experience in an area that when you turn around, you will make what you work for.
Right. And I mean, going from a fast food, I guess you would technically say it's fast food. That's probably not as hectic as McDonald's or Burger King would be. But
yeah,
man, I wouldn't want to go back to fast food ever.
No, but if my family needed me to.
Oh yeah, but that's
like
that right there is a situation.
For a few years, I worked in manufacturing of corrugated boxes, and we were struggling to make ends meet. And so while I was working third shift, I took a job in the deli of Publix, and I worked third shift at one job, and I worked another shift several nights a week at Publix. And I worked those two jobs for several months, fighting to catch up, until I realized that we were just going to drown anyways. Mm-hmm. And then finally, I quit that job because I was like, at this time, we're not getting out of the financial situation we were in. No matter if I would have worked there for the next 10 years and worked two jobs, mm-hmm. It was already way too late. We were already way too behind in life. We'd already made too many bad decisions. It was more important for me to have that time with my kids than it was for me to try to catch up at that time, because we were going to lose what we had anyway. And so, we made that decision, and I stepped down from the Publix job and continued my full-time night shift job until I got something better, and until I got something better, and until I got something better. Right. And, I'm not a big job hopper. I probably stay at a job longer than I should stay at a job, because I despise the lack of loyalty that exists nowadays. Everyone's always looking for a job, and I think you should be aware that they're out there. Mm-hmm. And I think you should have a desire to better your family. But I don't just hate the job hopping. I hate that companies don't always have the loyalty.
Well, the loyalty's not on both sides of the fence anymore.
Yeah, it's no longer reciprocal.
Right.
It's no longer beneficial for both parties.
Right.
Oftentimes it's only beneficial for one. Yeah. And so oftentimes, they may give you a raise to keep you, but are you actually worth the raise?
Right.
Or you're worth the raise, but they'll never fit it in their budget because they just don't want to pay anybody anymore.
Right.
Well, you make what the average manufacturer of such and such parts makes, so what's the problem? You may make the low end, and they'll still be like, well, what's the problem? And you'd be like, okay,
bye.
Like, I'll look for another job. And that's fine, that's understandable. But loyalty should also be a founding characteristic of a man. Do you have loyalty to your best friend? Or do you go through best friends like some of these young folks do left and right? Every year you got a new best friend. Like, one,
your wife. Adults
are a little different in this scenario because I have a lot of close friends, and some of those relationships have changed, of course, since I've gotten saved. I'm still extremely loyal to several of my old military buddies. We're not as close as we used to be because I live a completely different life than what they live. Naturally. But if I call them, they will drop what they're doing and they'll show up. And if they call me, I'll do the same. And then as far as civilian friends go, I have a few male friends who, same thing, I know, like, if I was in need, Jay Bird will show up. He already has before. Don't let him lie. Bruce. You know, Bruce has literally come over for dinner. I realized I had a water leak, and next thing you know, Bruce is elbow deep in mud and water helping me fix a water leak. You know, he didn't have to. He could have just stood there and talked to me the entire time I did it. I knew what I was doing. It wasn't a big deal. But instead, he just literally gets down to it, gets to work.
Well, what about that water leak over there?
Yeah.
At his dad?
Yeah.
I mean,
his dad had a water leak, and he didn't need me. You know? But one of the ways that men who seek to have sound character, I think one of the ways they bond is they work. You know, I like to work. I genuinely enjoy doing physical labor. You know, Saturday I spent all day burning off trees that I had already cut down a year prior, and I was cutting up more of them and throwing them on top of it and running the tractor, and it's, you know, the fire's 9,000 degrees. I feel like it's burning my face off.
In hot weather.
Yeah, and it wasn't cool Saturday.
What was it, like mid-70s?
I believe so. But you know, I think a lot of men, that's how they bond together, is they work together. Just like men in the military, they bond together by training together. They bond together by fighting together, and they may lay hands on each other. They may throw hands, but you let them be out in town, and someone get up in one of them's face, and they're all right there to back the other one up.
Right.
No, they're not.
Even though they just fought 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, they could have literally, physically fought each other.
Well, for a lot of siblings, right? Siblings are the same way.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, Tim Kennedy talks about one of his best friends. They're clearing a house, and as soon as Tim Kennedy's ready to bust the door open, his buddy shoves him out of the way and jumps in front of him, and he lost his life that day to machine gun fire. And Tim Kennedy will tell you, like, at first he was hot. Like, you know, everything happened so fast, it ain't registered yet exactly what happened, but when he got shoved out of the way by his buddy, you know, he was like, I was getting up, you know, like, I was ready to fist fight him. And then of course everything registers on what happened, and him and his buddy, they would fist fight over silly things, but they loved each other like brothers, you know.
Yeah.
But that's all right. They didn't hate each other. They weren't trying to hurt each other. They roughhoused a little bit and they moved on about it. I think we covered everything that I got to speak about on
everything.
The foundation of being a man and the characteristics of being a man.
Without going into politics. Congratulations.
You want to go into politics? Maybe later.
Maybe later. Oh, that's a 8-hour added podcast.
It's 8:25.
Yeah, that'd be a whole nother triple part podcast.
Yeah. I don't want to refrain from politics, but I don't want politics to be my main focus. Because you can't exist without politics.
Right.
And anyone who thinks you can
Scripturally
exist.
even.
Well, yeah.
I mean, politics is why he got crucified.
If you try to exist outside of politics, you're going to lose things that you find of value. I like to tell people, if you don't practice the rights that are given to you, eventually your government will take them from you.
Yeah.
And that has been shown throughout history. All
right
throughout history.
In America.
If you don't practice your freedom of speech, they're going to want to squish it when you finally decide to. Everyone should speak on the values that they believe in. Everyone. Put it out there. It's absurd for you not to put it out there. You don't have a true, genuine relationship with anyone in your life if they cannot understand the basic values that drive you.
Right.
Your religion.
What are you saying?
If you believe something is real, if you are religious and you believe that that religion is the one true religion, or even if you believe that all religions are one religion and that they're all true, say so. Put it out there. Because as human beings, we have to have dialogue to get along. And it's okay for you to be offended with me momentarily. It's okay for me to be offended with you momentarily. It's at the moment where I get offended with you, and I'm like, I can have nothing to do with him because I'm offended. Well, what did you do that offended me? You spoke your opinion? Opinions are not the problem. Now, if you spoke your opinion and I speak my opinion, I'm like, okay, cool, we disagree. Like, let's leave it alone. Don't try to convince me. I'm not going to try to convince you. We go on about our ways, and that's just something we don't worry about. There's plenty of other things in a relationship that can move on. Now, if every time we come together, you stab me in the back because you don't like something I'm doing, I probably need to cut off that relationship. And I will cut off relationships. It's not unforgiving to cut off a relationship. There's people I have no relationship with. I am not angry with them. I love them. I hope the best for them.
Mm-hmm. And maybe once things are different, relationships can continue.
They can continue. And unfortunately, there has to be some form, some fruit, some proof in their life that there's difference.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's not, then at that time, I may be wrong. I may still be closed off to that relationship. But if I can't see it at this time, I can't accept it back. And some people say, well, it seems too easy for you. And I tell them, you're not me. You don't know. You see what you get in person when I'm talking about it, what I'm dealing with about it. But you don't get to see the me that talks to my wife about it. You don't get to see the me that talks to my brothers about it. You know, you get to see the me that's talking in front of other people. And so at the time, those emotions are closed off. Because when I'm talking to a stranger on the street about some things and they're asking me some questions, sometimes it is time for those emotions to be closed off. But when I'm talking to my legitimate blood brother about something, who we have went through a lot of hell in life together, I can be a little more vulnerable. I can show him those emotions. I can cry if I have to.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be acceptable, and I will not be judged for it, and I won't even judge myself for it. I won't even apologize for it. Listen, if you're a man out there watching this and you're struggling with anything, don't be afraid to leave comments. Hey, we can reach out to you. You can reach out to us. We have a Facebook page. We have YouTube. We have TikTok. Don't be afraid to reach out. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Y'all have a great day.